We've all made mistakes at one point or another in life. And today, this video, I am helping you avoid those mistakes, talking to players that you shouldn't draft and players that you should. Starting it off with the first player that you shouldn't draft is going to be Deebo Samuel, who right now is going off the board in underdog leagues as wide receiver 16, overall player 21. My biggest worry is that there's a ton of mouths to feed. And as much as I love Deebo, and we've seen Deebo back in 2021 have a wide receiver 3 overall points per game finish, I am a little bit worried about Deebo in this overall workload. Now, last year, even though he only had 89 targets and 60 receptions, he had 14.9 yards per reception, 7 total receiving touchdowns, he still finished as the wide receiver 12 on a points per game basis in PPR with 16.3 fantasy points per game. Now, if you go down and look at the metrics, really the reason is just because of the efficiency and that the way that they use Deebo on those end around and in those rushing plays. Now, I am, for one, am not scared at all about him and Brandon Ayuk, because honestly, if we are looking at the Deebo Samuel splits right here, what you're going to notice is when he's in the split with Brandon Ayuk and when he's out of the split, he's actually performed better with Brandon Ayuk than he's performed without. So we can kind of put that myth to bed. But the part that we need to talk about with Deebo Samuel is that when they added Chris McCaffrey into this offense, because Christian McCaffrey was able to take a little bit more of the touches, we can see that in the split with Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel's gone down about a whole point in PPR differential without CMC before CMC joined the 49ers. So for me, I'm a little bit worried about Deebo Samuel's overall value right now in underdog leagues, just because of the fact that I know he's being drafted at wide receiver 16. Last year, he finished as a back end wide receiver 1. So you're going to be saying to me, Caleb, you're getting almost 4 picks of ADP drop. But the worry for me is they also added Ricky Pearsall into this offense. You still have George Kittle. Like, what's that snapshot going to look like for a guy who last year only got 89 targets, and we don't know what they're going to do and use him out of the backfield? Now, we absolutely love some Kyle Shanahan. We think he's an absolute offensive guru, an offensive master. I'm just a little bit concerned about the overall projection for Deebo Samuel. When we look at my projections for Deebo Samuel, I mean, to be completely honest, I have him getting 110 targets and 68 receptions. So if you're comparing that to last year, you're going to say, Caleb, that's a little bit more. I think he's going to get a little bit more in the reception game. I just don't think that overall touchdown upside that he had, I'm going to be able to get behind in this 2024 season for a guy like Deebo Samuel. So I'm not drafting Deebo, but I'm suggesting that instead of Deebo, you do draft Mike Evans, who Mike Evans is going one spot behind Deebo as wide receiver 17 in underdog leagues, overall player 23. And the thing is with Mike Evans, I know he's getting up there in age, but last year arguably had a better season with Baker Mayfield than he had in all the seasons with Tom Brady. Wide receiver 10 on a points per game basis with 16.6. Now, if we look at the years previous with Tom Brady, 15 fantasy points per game, 16.4. So he barely etched out that season. So cool. That fact was slightly correct. Then we go back to 2020 and he had 15.5. So Mike Evans has always finished around that 15 to 16 fantasy points per game. And I think a lot of people are looking at Mike Evans and saying, hey man, the age cliff's going to hit him. He just turned 30. He's going to be in his 31 season. I'm thinking Mike Evans, potentially of course, the floor is going to fall out for Mike Evans. So it could be any day now. But I think the value with Mike Evans is the fact that you know exactly what you're going to be getting. And I think a lot of people aren't worried about the overall upside that he could be getting, because in recent history, in his NFL career, he's finished as a top 5, top 3 wide receiver on a points per game basis, and he's consistently been under wide receiver 16, wide receiver 19 on a points per game basis. So the fact of the matter is that people are valuing Mike Evans right now as wide receiver 17. Kind of feels like his floor, if I'm being completely honest. And they didn't add anybody big in the draft. I know you could look at McMillan and be maybe slightly concerned about that, but Chris Godwin's going to be sliding back into the slot, and the ex-wide receiver is still Mike Evans. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers are still not a great team. I absolutely love some Mike Evans. And when we're looking at his overall projections for me in the model, I have him getting 141 targets, 85 receptions, 1,200 yards, and 8 total touchdowns. So just being the consistent Mike Evans that he's always been. So I like drafting a guy that's been consistent. So give me some Mike Evans over a guy like Deebo Samuel. Let me know what you think down below. If I'm being a must draft Mike Evans, don't draft some Deebo Samuel. So going to my next guy that you probably shouldn't draft right now, and it's going to be Sam LaPorta. And I know right now Sam LaPorta is going off the board as tight end overall 1 in fantasy football. And I know Sam LaPorta burst onto the scene last year. I also know that Sam LaPorta is a young, budding tight end from the University of Iowa, only 23 years old. So everyone's saying that the floor is only up. Last year was the tight end 3 on a points per game basis. In 17 games, 120 targets, 86 receptions. Now, the Detroit Lions added zilch in the passing game. I mean, you got Jameson Williams, hopefully going to step up this year. You still got Amon-Ra St. Brown. So Sam LaPorta is sliding in as that 1B, even sometimes 1A that he was alongside Amon-Ra St. Brown last year. Now, when we're looking at Sam LaPorta, my biggest worry for him is that now defenses know, oh, we got to actually watch out for Sam LaPorta. Now, I do have him getting 110 targets, 79 receptions, 790 yards, 6 total receiving touchdowns in my projections. But we'll say this, when we're looking at him last year, he got 120 targets. I don't know if he can get back to being that dominant tight end. And that's my biggest worry. I mean, he was tight end 5 on targets. And you could say that this year he's going to slide in, be better than that. It just makes me a little bit worried because you're drafting him at his ultimate ceiling as tight end 1. That's why I currently haven't drafted a ton of Sam LaPorta because, dude, I like Sam LaPorta. I really do. I think there's a ton of upside. But the issue is when you have to draft him as tight end 1 in the middle to early part of the 3rd round, going around pick 35, it's a tough pill to swallow. But that's really why I'm drafting Travis Kelce, who's currently the tight end 2, going off pick 39. Let us not remember, ladies and gentlemen, that Travis Kelce last offseason was going off the board in the 1st round of both underdog and your redraft leagues. And my dude finished as the tight end 1 on a points per game basis. After the year before that, finishing as the tight end 1 and the tight end 2 before that. And before that, finished as the tight end 1, tight end 1, tight end 1, tight end 2, tight end 2. This dude predominantly finishes as a top 2 tight end on a points per game basis. Now, Travis Kelce, we need to know what that Taylor Swift curse is going to look like this year, ladies and gentlemen. Listen, it didn't seem to affect him last year, but you never know. The Madden curse, you never know when it's going to bite. But a guy like Travis Kelce, the other thing that's going to bite is potentially the age, because he is going into his 35-year-old season, and he's old. But when we're looking at this overall offense, before teams like last year, you could really see them keying in on Travis Kelce, because who the heck else were they throwing the ball to? But this year, you got guys like Xavier Worthy, Hollywood Brown, field stretchers down the field. You got a guy like Rashee Rice. We'll have to see what happens with his overall suspension. But Travis Kelce is still predominantly Patrick Mahomes' overall number 1 target in this offense. And right now, I have Travis Kelce projected to have an overall target share of 23%. If we look at what he did last year in regards to this, he had a target share of 22%. So I think he's even inclined to get in a little bit more targets than he had last season. And if that is going to be the case, we could be talking about Travis Kelce getting back up to that 16 fantasy points per game. That if he gets it back up to that 16, 17 fantasy points per game, if he has a little bit more receiving touchdowns, because last year he only had 5. In previous seasons, he had 12, 9, 11. We know touchdowns are so hard to predict, but if somehow he were to get more touchdowns, boom, bada boom, Travis Kelce is easily the tight end 1. So for me, it's really hard to take a guy like Sam LaPorta in the 3rd when I could take an even later guy like Travis Kelce in the 3rd, who I do appreciate and like more. So let me know down below, am I crazy for drafting Travis Kelce and liking him a little bit more than Sam LaPorta right now? Going to my next guy that I don't think you should draft right now, it's going to be CJ Stroud. And you see the freaking jersey behind. Comes into the league last year and absolutely lights up a storm. QB7 points per game with 18.7. Now, you have the Texans, who you have elite level wide receivers in Tank Dell and Nico Collins. And what do? They add Stephon Diggs this offseason. And so you're looking at this team who also still has Dalton Schultz. They've addressed the offensive line in the NFL draft alongside Laremy Tunsil. And you're probably saying to yourself, we could easily see CJ Stroud absolutely dominate right now, because right now in the underdog rankings, he's going off the board as QB6. Now, my biggest thing with CJ Stroud is he is not a rushing threat. So he has to be the most dominant level QB to actually put up the same type of fantasy football numbers as those other guys. Now, if we're talking 6-point passing touchdown over 4, of course, so maybe CJ Stroud gets a slight bit of bump, but there's not enough for me even in that format to really care, because the guys are going ahead of him. Josh Allen, rushing threat. Jalen Hurts, rushing threat. Lamar Jackson, rushing threat. Patrick Mahomes, rushing threat. Anthony Richardson, rushing threat. And so I can't get behind CJ Stroud having to absolutely ball out, turn into the second coming of John Elway for him to put up better season than what he's at right now. Now, on the flip side, I do absolutely love Kyler Murray, who's going at QB7. And to add in the fact with Kyler Murray, my man not only is a Konami code quarterback, they add in Marvin Harrison Jr. for him this offseason. And again, my Buckeye fandom is just coming out in this video. But 18.9 fantasy points per game is what Kyler Murray did in the 8 games last season coming off that torn ACL. Ladies and gentlemen, he rushed for 244 yards. In the years previous to this, he played 11 games in 2022 before he tore that ACL, ran for 418. 2021, played in 14 games, ran for 423. In 2020, he ran for 819, was the QB3. 2019, as a rookie, he ran for 544. So the fact of the matter is, I think with a fully healthy season from Kyler Murray, we're talking at least 500 rushing attempts in this Arizona Cardinals offense. So tell me right now, with a guy that can also throw for anywhere between 26 to 28 touchdowns a game and also rush the ball, are we really going to be taking him with a guy like CJ Stroud, who's probably going to have to throw like 34 to 36 touchdowns, and last year he threw 23 touchdowns. So that's going to have to be a big efficiency jump for a guy like CJ Stroud to really compete with a guy like Kyler Murray in a points per game basis. So that's my biggest concern with the current ADP. Listen, I love some CJ Stroud. I think he's an absolute dime. I think CJ Stroud's an absolute baller. I think he's an absolute franchise player. I'll have plenty of CJ Stroud in my draft, but the thing is right now, I prefer to draft a guy like Kyler Murray in a team that's going to be pretty bad. They're going to have to throw the ball and score a lot of points to maintain leads or catch up. Let me know if you agree with these must-avoid players, these mistakes, and if you're going to be taking the alternatives. And if not, let me know down below in the comments. We're putting out redraft videos each and every day, so I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Hit that like and subscribe button, and I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.